Thanks, Namita, and thank you for that very refreshing session. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session on winning with OKRs. Now, I know that both these sessions have been back to back, but if anybody would like to take a stretch or a bio break, you could feel free to do that. Just to give you a quick introduction of who we are and what we do, Fitbots is an integrated OKRs partner to clients. So we have both the SaaS platform as well as on-demand coaching because we found that many teams are new to OKRs. Along with that, we also certify many teams. So we've personally certified about 200 plus professionals across the globe. And today, when we work with clients, they come over, take a subscription for our platform and also say, hey, help coach our teams, because many a time leadership teams don't have the bandwidth to coach on OKRs. Many of the clients that we worked with are really cross segments. So we work with a number of scale-ups, venture-funded startups which are getting into the next phase of growth, as well as enterprises who have now started adopting OKRs. Some of them are Standard Chartered Bank based out of Singapore and the UK, Will Group, which is a big conglomerate, and others. So I just wanted to do a quick introduction of both Kashi and me. I'll request Kashi, my co-founder, to first introduce himself, and I'll go next.
Hello everyone, I'm Kashi, co-founder and CTO of Fitbots. Prior to this, I was an enterprise architect, building systems of scale to more than 100 million users, predominantly CRM platforms. After that, I only realized that leadership looks at matrices and dashboard only to make decisions on their own in a different way to take the company forward. This got me really intrigued and got into understanding a lot of decision-making frameworks, and OKRs is the simplest of all of them. Got into the trenches along with Vidya. Then we coached more than 500 plus teams personally, and then built our software product, which is Fitbots OKRs. And it's been a fun ride with all the insights, platforms, and analytics.
Thanks, Kashi. Hi, everyone. My name is Vidya. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Fitbots. Started Fitbots in 2018 along with Kashi, as I mentioned. After coming from a fairly long enterprise career, I worked for about 17 years and then saw this big gap in strategy to execution, and voila, they came OKRs, and it's been a fun ride so far. But something that I personally enjoy in objectives and key results is a point I think Namita was also alluding to, is the word called alignment. So in OKRs, it's not only about vertical alignment, because we get vertical alignment quite quickly when it comes to goal setting. But what OKRs is actually about is the powerful bi-directional alignment, where your next level teams bi-directionally align and move the needle forward. So we'll learn a lot more about that. In the parlance of OKRs, we have this saying as coaches and facilitators is that repetition is the price that we pay for mastery. So do, excuse us if you're already OKR practitioners. Much of what we call out today would be a reinforcement of what you know. So in today's session, we would go through what exactly are OKRs. There's so much of content around the internet, but how do we really explain OKRs to our next level teams, and how are they different? Is it another shiny new penny of management, or is there really substance in the framework? Then we'll get on to how do you write an OKR. No matter which teams we work with, be it leadership or let's say next level teams, there's always this little bit of a starting trouble. So here we have demystified the entire process and encapsulated it into a very simple formula for you to use to craft an OKR. We'll do a quick exercise in class, also do a platform demo so that you can actually see in reality, how do your next level teams go through something that we call an OKR check-in process and Q&A as we go. All right, so on that note, we'll start with one of our favorite proverbs, and this is an African proverb, and this is from the jungle, where it says, if you want to go fast in the jungle, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go as a team. So the essence of OKRs is that it's a shift from me to we. So in traditional goal management frameworks, you can actually visualize a manager and a team member coming together to write goals, set up KPIs, and probably put it on a system and review it maybe quarterly or mid-year. That's not what we're talking about. In OKRs, it's about teams coming together. So I've got two little visuals out here. One is about casting a net versus spear fishing. So OKRs are not about casting a net. So it's not about the trivial many, but it's about the vital few metrics. So you can think of OKRs like spear fishing, where once you have the strategic priorities of your organization, already defined, that's when OKRs comes in. So it's not a replacement for your strategy exercise, but it's a strategy to an execution framework, going very, very specific on certain metrics that you want to move the needle together, not only for you as a leadership teams, but most important, your next level teams. So let's just slip under the hood and learn a lot more about how do you define OKRs. The first and foremost, a strategy execution framework, which aligns teams to the most critical business priorities. Now, here we're not talking about business as usual metrics. I'll call out a few BAUs. So for instance, for finance teams in your organizations, compliance is a business as usual metric, but that's not what we're talking about. This is really the most critical business priorities which you want your next level teams to focus on. Borrows heavily from Agile. So OKRs borrow heavily from Agile because it's definitely not a set and forget framework. Now, Kashi and I together have coached about 550 teams. And one of the observations, whether the organization is big or small, we noticed that there's a lot of infatuation around writing OKRs. But it's not about only writing OKRs, but really about taking it through. And that's where the power of check-ins come in. And we're going to speak a lot more about this. OKRs actually get teams to work together and manage by outcomes. So one of the fundamental shifts that we see team members go through, especially next level teams to leadership teams, is the shift from tasks to managing by outcomes. So today we coach an EdTech major, about 400 members in the organization are all part of OKRs. And the couple of quarters, the first 2 quarters, we actually had a lot of conversations around shifting the needle from inputs to outcomes. So this is something that teams get as they practice OKRs. And finally, everything about OKRs is all about the secret sauce of alignment. So what are some of the powerful shifts that we see organizations go through? So I'm just going to reinforce going back to that point. Here's the shift from me to we, where teams come together to write outcome-based metrics rather than tasks. It's not about a manager and team member, but OKRs are well set as squads and pods. So what do I mean by a squad and pod? So let's say in the context of an organization, if increasing customer experience from point A to point B, you already have a baseline metric and you want to move the needle, is a heavy amount of focus, then you have different cross-functional teams. They can come from different parts of the organization, come together as a squad and pod to actually address the problem. From a mid-year and annual, the movement of OKRs is to a weekly cadence, where 99% of companies that we work with follow a week-on-week check-in, which is already also clubbed with one of the existing meetings, so it's not another to-do in the list. From a catch-it-all KPIs, which are mostly lag indicators, OKRs follow a 3x5 framework mostly, where not more than 3 objectives and at most 5 key results. Now, the significant shift that you would see in OKRs, I saw a comment by TV in the chat window where he spoke about the word lag, right? And here we're not talking about lag indicators, but what are those lead indicators to the business that you want to measure and correct a lot sooner? And finally, OKRs are tracked on a real-time basis through the platform, or let's say if you're a team of, let's say 15 practicing OKRs, then you could use another, let's say spreadsheet, but more than that, typically they get onto a software. And finally, instead of managers, there's a role called team champions. Team champions is much like the Scrum Masters in Agile, where they're actually getting the teams enthused around OKRs, and team champions is important for sustenance. They're also the future leaders of your organization who learn end-to-end of the business. So with this summary of what are the shifts that would happen in the context of your organization, I'm just going to a quick spiel on, hey, what are the top reasons that companies are moving to OKRs? We see that there are multiple reasons why CXOs reach out to us today. The first and foremost is, of course, what got us here will not necessarily take us to the next level. And today, Namita spoke about the strategy of 2025. I'm sure as a leadership team, you would have a frame of 2025. So how do you really get your next level teams enthused around it? Then there's this entire conversation around hybrid work models. I'm sure a lot of virtual onboarding has happened for your next level teams. How do you really connect the dots from what they do to the outcome-based metrics? So OKRs is a nice connector from tasks to outcome metrics to the objectives you want to achieve. And I'll go through each of those. Then there are others who come to us to say that, hey, help us bring back the customer intimacy. So we want OKRs to actually supercharge teams. And of course, pivots was something that we saw a lot through, especially after COVID. Many scale-ups especially came and told us and said that, hey, help us with OKRs because we want to pivot through these disruptions. So in your context, you could also probably, hit me on the chat window with what do you think are some of the reasons why you think OKRs may be a fit for your organizations. You could just do a quick share so that we can kind of read each other's comments as well. So far, I'm just going to reinforce what we just went through. We went through a quick definition of OKRs. Hey, how exactly are OKRs different? And finally landed on what are some of the topmost reasons why companies are moving to OKRs. I'm now going to come into the next part of the session, which is how do you really write a high quality OKR? Because it's not always easy to start writing OKRs, especially when your teams are new to it. So here we're going to introduce you to something that we call a winning OKR formula, which is a simple template which you could take back to your next level teams. When OKRs are written, the first and foremost element that we spoke about is that they're all connected and aligned. So when we work with organizations, many organizations actually introduce OKRs as a pilot because there are already existing practices which are there in companies. And especially since your organizations are large organizations, you probably may want to think about pilots. Pilots are essentially not a 90-day pilot. It actually is a one-year commitment. And typically pilot teams go anywhere from, let's say, 70 to 100 members because you want to get a good number of people who would role model to others. But no matter how you introduce OKRs, they're always connected. So they're highly connected to the mission, vision, and value prop. And that's where the company OKRs come in. Company OKRs, in our experience, are written from a 6-month to 12-month perspective for large organizations. But when we work with scale-ups, they're sometimes written even for 90 days and reset every 90 days. But when next level teams write objectives and key results, which are connected and aligned to the company level key results, or let's say you're taking a specific business unit and then you're writing OKRs, even then it's written from a 90-day cadence perspective. I'm just going to pause here and happy to take questions or comments before I move into how do we write a high quality OKR. Any questions so far, please?
Vidya, this is Tathagat here. Just one question, and I've been using OKRs for some time, and I'm sure many of us on the call have been using as well. I think the notion of an OKR, and especially when we cascade it down from O to KR, and that itself feeds into another second level objective, works very well for some of the business facing or some of the sort of a quantitative measures. A lot of us, I think, are representing here the strategic long-term capability development of the GICs that we come from. So for example, you are building a long-term architectural capability, or you are building something else, which are very fuzzy and very nebulous as it is. The end state itself is not very clearly defined, so you don't know when is the finish line there. I think it will be helpful if you can also take some example of how do you really go about unpacking some of those strategic goals into OKRs, because you cannot really kind of articulate the end goal, let alone the interim one. So that would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, and absolutely, TV. In fact, in the parlance of OKRs, they call the milestone-based key results. I'll take some examples of milestone-based key results, which are a little more project-like. They don't have a metric to measure, but you can still quantify it, and we'll talk about that. Thank you. Great. So let's get on to how do we write a high-quality OKR, and I'll also take TV's question as we go through this example. In the parlance of OKRs, you would know that objectives are the broad qualitative statements. So again, I'll go back to the point, and I'm sure this is a reinforcement, that it's not the business as usual metrics, but it's your strategic priorities, and those get translated into your objective statements. So when we look at objective statements, they should answer the question, hey, what exactly do we need to accomplish? If you're writing it from the parlance of your company level OKRs, it's written from a 6-month to a 12-month perspective, but reviewed every 90 days. But if your next level teams write the OKRs, they write it from a 90-day cadence perspective, which is they measure it over 90 days. So when you write an objective statement, there's a certain formula to it. So we've analyzed about 40,000 plus OKRs, and we realized that, hey, there's a formula and a method to this. High quality objectives start with a verb because everything about OKRs is actionable. What exactly do we want to accomplish, and what's the business value? So for instance, in this context, double down on our upsell strategy in order to accelerate growth. In the context of your organizations, it could be, let's say, launch or implement our next generation capability programs in order to drive customer experience. So whatever objective statement you're taking, even while you as a leadership team get it very quickly, what we usually find in our experience is the next level teams actually struggle with call out of the business value because many a time the connection of the dots is not established. So with the objective formula at the back of our mind, I'm just going on to how do you really craft those objectives? So I've got about 3 examples here. Um, there's a first example, which is, and this was written by one of our customers, where they said that let's scale our business operations. Scale starts with the verb. What exactly are we trying to do? Scale our business operations. And what's the business value? Of course, to capture market share, considering that they had a good way of measuring market share. I'll take the third one, which is grow in emerging markets, which is very, very specific in which markets they would like to go in order to accelerate revenues. And finally, another company level OKRs which an organization took was focus on people development and what's the business value in order to retain talent. So the point we're trying to make is strategy sometimes becomes very nebulous to your next level teams. The magic happens when you simplify it for your next level teams to actually execute better. Another pause here, and please do let me know if there are any questions in how to write an objective statement before I go on to a very important aspect of how do you write key results.
There's a comment, I think, from Savikiran from Mr. Cooper.
Yeah.
Do you want to unmute yourself, Savikiran, and ask the question?
Yeah. So really, hi, thanks, Namita. So primarily the question is around the silos, right? So where typically the teams in the US are driving revenue, focus kind of metrics. Well, out here we are delivering, operations kind of metrics around efficiency, quality, etc. So really, when we, kind of present scorecards, exchange scorecards, normally there is a disconnect. While it's widget based out here, based on how many units we deliver, so on. Out there, it could be like 10 different steps to a particular process, and each of them we consider as a widget. So when the final product comes out, they look at it at the overall number, while we are looking at it as widgets. So often there's a disconnect with how we, kind of make both these metrics. So that's one primary requirement that I have. I'm trying to kind of get an understanding.
Okay, I think Kashi unmuted. Kashi, go for it.
Yeah, we see this being solved in 2 ways. When OKRs are taken, be it at someone down the chain, like maybe even GCoE or somebody else, we articulate saying that, hey, what we do actually increases the margin or operational margin at a company level. So you do take it at saying that, hey, by delivering those widgets in time or those modules on time that you are delivering from wherever you're developing, you're actually improving the margin. So what happens is it helps you drive the transparency even at a global level, saying that, hey, what we are doing is actually making an impact. So we take it that way. And in order to do that, hey, we improve our efficiency of delivery, or we ship more number of components from here, be it software or hardware, in order to overall decrease operational margin. Now, that becomes very clear, but in fact, it can also be to accelerate growth, so or revenue. So it could. So what we are trying to say is, when we break organizational silos, you're inviting others into the conversation so that they see the impact. And over a period of time, what we see is that everybody works together in order to drive impact at a company level. I hope that answers that question in that particular context. Yeah.
Yes, Kashi. Thank you.
Thanks, Kashi. I'm just going to move forward. Just a quick recap of all that we have gone through so far. We've gone through how do you really connect and align OKRs from a company to a team. Then went on to describing how do you write a high quality objective using a very simple formula. And now getting on to how do you craft key results. Now, in our experience, key results crafting is probably one of the trickiest zones. And the reason being is that there's so much that we can actually pick up. How do we really prioritize? Now, in the parlance of OKRs, key results basically help you answer the question, how exactly do we know whether we've met our objective? Key results also help teams articulate, hey, what's the eye on the prize? In fact, Namita used that phrase, what's the eye on the prize? And that's a phrase which global OKR practitioners use. So when you think of key results, you typically have a very specific formula, and you can take any OKR in your context, any strategic theme, and you can actually write it in the same formula. It starts with a verb, the action word, metric that you'd like to measure, and movement of the needle from X to Y. Many a time in KPIs, you're measuring it at a point of time, but what OKRs does for your teams is that it helps them think about, hey, we're at a baseline metric, and how much do we move it forward at the end of 90 days? your verbs can also have both a positive or a negative connotation. So you would have some metrics which you would like to increase or some reduce, depending upon the kind of metric. So let's take an example. While I know that this probably may not relevant to your business, but I've just taken this just to illustrate the OKR formula. The same objective, if you recollect, which is our upsell strategy in order to accelerate revenues, double down on our upsell strategy. The way this company thought about it was increase new category addition from 10 to 28, increase average revenue ARPA from customer from USD 20 to 25 million, considering that they have really large deals, and then increase customer pulse scores from 3.48 to 4.5. So again, with these specific metrics, teams now start aligning their activities towards the outcome-based metrics. I'm coming to another question which was asked earlier, which is what happens if we don't have measurable ones? So this is how the milestone-based key results would look, which is launch our innovation program with startups, for instance. So this is more program-like. It can be still measured in 90 days by dividing it into milestones. So I just wanted to respond to that question which came in. If we don't have metrics, how do we measure it? It's more project-like, but the eye on the prize at the end of 90 days needs to be clearly defined for teams to say that at the end of 90 days, we'll be launching the program, and this is tracked like a project when it comes to OKRs. All right, so I'm just going to move forward with how do we identify the right metrics. So one of the points that we called out is while OKRs look simple, it's still not simplistic. And one of the learnings is how do you identify the right key results which your teams should measure. So I've got 3 examples of companies that we all have probably used their products or have experienced them. The first is Airbnb, the second is Dropbox, and the third is Slack. So Airbnb, for instance, when they started using OKRs, they started measuring signups, and they said that, hey, signups is not a great measure. They went on to bookings and then customer NPS. Similarly, Dropbox said that 5 out of 25 features if they're used, then I'm building a kick-ass product. And Slack said 4,000 weekly messages would need to be exchanged. So the point that we're trying to make is when you're thinking about OKRs, the more lead indicators to your business, the higher is the quality of your OKR writing because your teams can control it a lot sooner. The last part about objectives and key results is the differentiation between KRs and activities. So typically, this is again a common trap that we find teams go through. When they define key results, one of the traps that teams actually go through is something called the masqueraded KR, where they charade a task and make it fit into a key result formula, but that does not necessarily move the business forward. So in this specific example, I've taken activities like running a campaign, making training videos, building feature X, or writing BRDs are actually activities and do not move the key result forward. So I've just got a quick exercise here, and this exercise in how do we improve these key results? So increase sales by 50%. Would anybody like to just give it a stab on how do you improve this key result using the OKR formula?
Give a time frame for sure.
Yeah. So that's a good point. When we think about OKRs, in fact, one of the assumptions that we go into OKRs is that we're measuring it over 90 days. If it's written for a team and if it's written for a company, it's for 6 months to 12 months. So having that assumption in mind, would you still like to improve this key result further?
Sorry, I was unable to unmute.
No problem.
You need to add what is the business value? Yeah, you increase sales by 50% by some timeline, but what are you achieving?
Yeah, and the business value, in fact, is articulated in the objective statement. I'm just going to build on what you said. Here we're focusing on key results. And typically, if you notice key results, they move from X to Y. So what was missing in that particular statement is a baseline metric. But there's another very interesting thing about that baseline metric is that the percentages, right? And sometimes percentages get teams into what we call the minutia. You won't be able to really measure it. So 50% of, let's say, 100K versus 50% on a base of 1 million is a very different story. So what we ideally coach teams is, try and use as less of percentage and more of value so that you're really able to call out progress. So you'd rather say something like increase sales from USD X to Y million. That's a very, very simple way of articulating it. But thank you for attempting that. I truly appreciate it. Great. I'm just going on to the next one, which is increase email campaigns from 10 to 20 per week. And since you're all OKR practitioners, and if your next level teams come and ask you this, whether it's a good key result, what would be your coach input to them?
I can go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I can go, I would just ask what you're trying to achieve with the email campaigns, as in why the campaigns.
Yeah. Kavita, fantastic one. In fact, this is what we call the masqueraded KR. They are beautifully fitted. They're fitting into the KR formula, but this metric standalone will not move the business forward. So email campaigns is actually an input or a task, but ideally a better metric for, let's say, your marketing team members who are trying to increase the presence of your organization in the global setup would ideally like to either measure click-through rates or even probably responses. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's a better metric that you'd like to measure. So you're absolutely in the right direction. So I think we're getting the hang of how to differentiate tasks and outcomes. All right, so let's go on to how, when you actually write OKRs, how exactly do they look different? So I'm just taking an example of TJ. TJ is part of the technology team. And if you write goals in the current way or the erstwhile way of writing, you would typically find that TJ, as a great engineer, would be taking increasing feature builds, reducing the number of bugs, maybe identifying the right tools, and then automating certain campaigns for marketing. However, if TJ comes together with a team and sets OKRs, the team would be thinking more broadly to align to your strategic outcomes. So TJ would say that, okay, let's form a team called digital transformation. Our big objective is build a best-in-class digital experience in order to enable recurring sales. Now, even if TJ probably is not able to directly move recurring sales, but would have an influence on it. So there's a cross-functional team which comes together, which has sales, product engineering, maybe somebody from delivery ops, who come together and say that, okay, let's form a squad. So reduce errors in sales incentive from X to Y, increase recurring revenue from X to Y million, the lag indicator goes right at the bottom. So if you see, many of the key results on top are the lead indicators to the business, and each of these are owned by different cross-functional teams. Now, this is one way of doing it. We also find some organizations set OKRs as departments and bidirectionally align. Not the best way of doing it because it still leads to silos. But let's say you're a large organization, you don't want to experiment with squads and pods. You could still have departments setting OKRs, but most importantly, bidirectionally aligning it. Any questions on what we have discussed so far on? I love that point on Vanity Metrics. It's absolutely correct, because Vanity Metrics, like signups, for instance, is a very big vanity metric, and it's really about reducing churn, which probably would be a better metric.
I just thought to add upon to what Vidya said as to why this is very important for your teams. One of the challenges that we do here, especially in global COEs that you're all leading, is to help your teams articulate or establish the value proposition all the way to your international or to your headquarters. Let's say, for example, the CEO of Walmart lands up in your office and meets the engineer in the elevator. And he asks, right, hey, what are you working on? Oh, I'm just implementing Kubernetes in order to ensure that the server's uptime is greater than 99.9%, then, or something like that. Or what would happen eventually is that say, hey, great job, and he'll walk away. Instead of that, let's say, imagine everybody within the organization calls out saying that, you know what, we are making Walmart and Flipkart services more reliable by establishing zero downtime. And here's what we are doing as technology team to do that. Now, what happens is that the business leaders who meets or converses with each and everyone within your team understands that, hey, they understand the value of it and how it will provide your global organization the competitive advantage. And that narrative of selling doesn't need to happen only at the leadership level, it is across the company. So fundamentally, what we are helping establish with OKRs is each and everyone take away burden from the leadership and own those business metrics, even at the, let's say, your next level and down to the people who are implementing it, so that we are able to scale the organization seamlessly and help you focus it helps you focus on what is more important over a period of time.
I have
Yeah,
another
Vidya,
example.
just to kind of add on this, and these are OKRs are great, but also to kind of call out fact that maybe when we're defining metrics as well, right? I mean, when we say, okay, going from, for example, if you want to reduce the lead time to hire, say reducing the lead time to hire from say 50 days to a 30 days, without compromising the quality of hire, right? So some of the things, right, we tend to forget. I mean, we look into the metrics of lead time or adjoining ratio or offer acceptance, but we are kind of forgetting some of the base things which we need to be kind of really maintaining, right? I mean, the keeping other things constant, right, as it was. So just a call out there.
You're absolutely spot on, because it's not about any metric, and which is why there's a lot more actually intense effort in key result selection. And going back to the point of 3x5, you're actually asking teams to select the 5 most important outcome-based metrics. You would also have one more catch there, is especially during bi-directional alignment, our experience has been that sometimes teams tend to take polarized ones. So I worked with a pharma company where the marketing team was trying to increase discount campaigns from X to Y, right? And that's because it was the first quarter of them writing OKRs. They said, hey, we want to increase the number of discounts that we give. Though it was actually a task shaded into a key result. But the supply chain management team was actually trying to reduce the number of discounts which are given to customers philosophically. So this is what we call a misaligned KR. So in your point, you're absolutely spot on. It's not about any metric to reduce lead time, but maybe a more important metric is how do you improve the quality of hires? And then it goes back to your sourcing ratios. Maybe that's something that you may want to measure and improve further. At the end of every 90 days, another learning that we have is teams actually can take a completely different set of metrics. So in OKRs, we're not talking about, let's say, any numbers which are split quarter on quarter. That's not what we're referring to. Every quarter, these metrics can change because the way you solve the business problem, even if the objective statement goes from one quarter to another, but the metrics you measure and move can be very different from quarter on quarter. So I hope this added to your thought, because it's a very, it's a point which is very spot on in the context of OKRs, what you just articulated. Great. So just coming down to how do you really organize OKRs? So, we actually enjoy, OKRs, and it should be like a story, because, we all love stories. We read it to our children or, to our nieces and nephews. So when you organize your OKRs, it should tell you a story. So the lead goes on the top and the lag indicators come towards the bottom. The reason why it's organized this way is because it also has an impact on team morale. So let's say your lag indicators like churn or revenue, and in the context of those who do manage this metric, these are lag indicators. But your teams, if they start focusing on the lead indicators and they see the movement of the needle, they feel a lot more enthused on managing by OKRs. So there's also like a psychological angle to lead and lag indicators, much like this club sandwich, where the lead come on the top and the lag below. I'm just going on to the last point around how do you write OKRs, which is how do you really align OKRs. Just taking another example to reinforce our learnings. Let's say at the company level, or in your context, the business unit level, you have 2 key results. Now, these key results have numbers, they're revenue driven, but it could be something different in your context. If, let's say, the company level OKR was to increase revenue from 250 to 350 M, then you have a squad which says the new market entry squad, which is coming together and cracking our new market to enter Europe to accelerate growth is the big objective. And then you have different lead indicators which are owned by different members from different departments who come together. Each key result is again supported by a list of activities. So while you have 1 or 2 owners for a KR, the activities can again be owned by their next level team. So every KR has a set of activities which move it forward. All right. So on this note, we're just going to do an in-class assignment just to take the learnings of the OKR formula to practice. The assignment is quite simple, and I'm sure you already have this in the top of your mind. So let's say it's the mid-year or the end of the year, and you're at an award event, and your organization is getting awarded. There's these flashing lights, there's rock music, there are rockets shooting in the sky, and you're by the beach side. Your team has won the award for transformation. And I think Namita spoke a lot about being the transformation hub. and you visualize the smiles and the cheers as you climb up on stage to get this award. So in this moment of glory or victory, you could talk about what are some of the priorities which led you to receive this award. And the one or two priorities, you could attempt to convert it into the OKR formula. So we just have a 10-minute exercise that we thought we could, hand over to you to attempt. Would you have any questions on this? We're just talking about like a business priority that for which you run the award, and how do you translate it into the OKR formula, which would have helped your teams to move it forward?
So what I've done is to help you get through the exercise. I've just pasted the objective formula in the chat and also the KR formula in the chat so that you could use it to practice it. And go feel free, and also given you the link to the exercise. If you want to edit it online, I can give you the link to the slide as well. But some of you may have something that may be confidential to you or completes your choice completely. But we would love that if one or two of you come and share the story. It will be really fun for all of us to listen. So just in interest of time, I think we can take a pause. I see an amazing OKR set written by Samsung team. Would you want to share? Or if anybody else can share as well, that would be great.
I can go first. I give it a try.
Yeah, Dipesh, it's really nice. So maybe you can share your screen.
So can you share my screen?
Oh yeah, I can. So I share your screen. So I'm just sharing the thought experiment and the exercise done by the patient team. I know these are representatives, so we'll just go with the fun of it. Dipesh, do you want to read it out for all of us?
This is about our Samsung Pay. It's one of the many payment wallets in the country. It's very difficult to be part of the top tier apps. Everybody wants to integrate Google Pay, Phone Pay, Paytm, Samsung Pay, so many UPI wallets. So if we get there on top with tier 1 provider accepting it, that's a celebration moment. The squad is basically Samsung Pay in the most loved app.
Right.
And each KRA, if you can zoom it, so the persons who are developing user experience for them, convince tier 1 food delivery app company to include Samsung Pay as one of the payment methods by demonstrating simplicity in terms of single click. That KRA is for the UX designers, basically. And KRA 2 will be data analysis team, basically share consumer data-based insight with leading food delivery app company to convince them to include Samsung Pay as one of payment methods. And then there'll be one more that works with global stakeholders. So that team will take this KRA that engage with global stakeholders, convince them that if we have to do some concessions for a lead partner, we have to convince them. And there are some similarity like Russia. So it's not X to Y, but there is an example, lead example that people can use. So like this, each team can come together to achieve this. So it was a nice exercise. I enjoyed doing it. Thank you.
Awesome. I think I just want to add a few notes from the exercise that you did, Dipesh. It's first of all, for the first attempt, within 10 minutes, it's really awesome. Thank you for attempting it. Importantly, this really is a great OKR by design, because you're taking on something which almost seems like mission impossible and puts you into the strategic lever. If you're able to achieve it, it will definitely put Samsung Pay on the global radar. I think even being able to take it and brainstorm it is really nice. So when you scale it to your teams and your teams come up with ideas and they do the on-ground market research in order to only achieve one thing, make it as the top 3 apps in the ecosystem, is really great objective and key result to take. Some small observations that we can refine over a period of time is how do you make your objectives really great. Maybe KRs can be further refined, but within the 10 minutes, I think, great job. Anybody else would like to share how they went about doing the exercise and the reflections they got?
I just want to add a couple of observations onto the OKR. Very well attempted. I would double down on Kashi's point on making them measurable, because while sometimes we are not able to get the metric right away, but when your next level teams actually brainstorm metrics, for instance, convince tier 1 food delivery app company, that could be a milestone-based KR, but in the next quarter, it can actually move into some kind of a metric-based KR that you want to, which is how many probably people use the Samsung Pay. and move that from X to Y. That could be probably a measure that you could consider. The next small parlance is that key results, since it's KRAs are linked to roles. Key results are your most important business metrics. So when you coach your next level teams, you could also probably articulate the difference between KRAs to KRs, but otherwise it's really well attempted. Thank you, Dipesh, for giving this a stab.
In fact, I experienced Samsung Pay in Singapore. I loved it because it was a one-tap pay, but in India, I hope the same thing comes up. So this is really great. Anybody else would like to share their key results that they have attempted during the session?
Great. So let's move forward.
Just in the interest of time. Okay, there's one from Paul. So yeah, you want to go ahead, Paul?
Yeah, sure. I mean, sorry, we can't access the Google Docs document. Okay. So I just kind of drafted one thing in terms of the objective. So Allstate is primarily an offline P&C insurer. So we want to kind of move towards online and have a digital transformation initiative. So just kind of mentioned saying that enhancing digital adoption among the P&C customers. I mean, the business value benefit is seamless customer experience. I mean, we can be more responsive, and also it will optimize the cost of operations, right? So by doing this, moving from an offline to an online. And one of the key results for us to kind of measure is increasing the online revenue share for auto and property policies from a 20%, just random numbers, 20% to a 35% by end of 2023. And there could be other KRs as well.
Thank you for attempting that, Sarish. The OKR is structurally correct. As you rightly said, when the increase of online revenue share can be well supported by the lead indicators, something that your teams can control a lot sooner before the actual revenue share increases. And what would that metric be in your context? Any other metric which comes to mind as a lead indicator?
I mean, we kind of sell policies, right? So the number of policies sold can go from X to Y. I mean, it could be 2 million policies, 4 million policies. So that could be one of the things. We also closely track Net Promoter Score, but then that's more of a lagging indicator, though.
Rightly said. Thank you for attempting this.
Thank you.
So let's move forward. We've now actually traversed through a lot of, in the last probably 45 minutes, we've reestablished why OKRs are important, then went on to understanding more about how to write a high quality OKR, discerning lead and lag indicators, which you're already very, very familiar with, and then getting into how our OKRs sustained. So one of the challenges that we have every time somebody comes up to us and says that, hey, we want to implement OKRs. We've read the John Doerr book. So John Doerr, who's written Measure What Matters, which is probably one of the best sellers globally. So we find that many a time that becomes a rider for adopting OKRs. But one of the coach inputs that we have to organizations is not to look at it as a project. Even if you're thinking about a pilot, the pilot typically goes through a 1-year journey, because every quarter on quarter, you want to help sustain OKRs and role model them to others. So typically when we work with an organization, it starts, especially for next level teams, understanding OKRs, going on to company level OKR crafting, which is tightly linked to the strategic priorities that you've already identified. And then your teams do the next level of OKR crafting. As opposed to a peck down, like it's not like a peck it down order. It's called connect and align, where teams come up with what are the lead indicators, which will help move the company level key results or your business unit level key results forward. So it's about connect and align as opposed to the traditional peck order. From there, we get on to OKR alignment. And then during week-on-week check-ins, which is really the spot here, your team champion. So one of the call-outs that we made in what are the benefits of OKRs? There's a role called team champion. Team champions are not necessarily the senior most members in your next level teams. They're probably the most enthusiastic members and wish to learn the end-to-end of the business. Team champions, when nestled in a team, will drive the OKR check-in meetings to help you sustain OKRs. At the end of 90 days, there's a ritual called retro reboot. So retro reboot is resetting OKRs for the next 90 days. So I just thought I'll call out the OKR cycle to make it very specific. What are 3 rituals which go along with the OKR cycle? So we have typically 3 kinds of rituals. One is the week-on-week check-in, where teams note progress on outcome-based metrics, call out blockers. Then the leadership review, which they would have with yourself. Leadership reviews happen either monthly, but one of the leadership reviews in a quarter is converted to the mid-quarter check-in, where teams discuss, hey, do we need to refine or thread any of the OKRs? So in case they're not relevant anymore. And finally, at the end of the quarter, there is a retro reboot, which is basically what's our learning and how do we reset metrics for the next 90 days. We'll now get into a quick demo of Fitbots so that you can see a quick use case on how to really connect and align, how does really connect and align happen visually, and how do your teams do an effective check-in meeting in reality. So I'm just going to hand it over to Kashi for a quick 5-minute overview of how is it done visually. Kashi, over to you.
As I get into the demo, I'll also try to answer three important questions to all global COE leaders, which came up during the call. Number one, how do we have a say in strategic priorities at a company level? Number two, how do we keep track of all our success and achievements and showcase it to our global teams? Three, how do I drive this across multiple teams across the levels of the organization? So with that as a context, we'll just jump right into the demo in quick 5 minutes. So here's a quick view of Fitbots OKR platform. As you have logged in, of course, we run by the theme, saying that align your hybrid teams with OKRs. We believe hybrid is the new normal. We help companies shift the focus from me, which is managing by individual, to managing by at a company level. So we're all focused at a team level. The entire exercise starts with establishing company level OKRs. So whatever you learned in the exercise today, a mini version of it is already there on the platform, where you can get started by adding an objective, which everything is in terms of formula, which starts with the action word. What would you like to achieve in order to drive business value? And a KR has a formula, and you can help your teams get started in multiple ways. We have built-in templates to help you move forward. As we establish OKRs, the superpower of OKRs comes with the insights and heat maps, which help you track the progress of your objectives and key results in form of a heat map across multiple levels of your organization, and importantly, drive strategic outcomes with alignment boards. Here, we're going to give you a quick peek into how does it all come together. You'll find that in Fitbots alignment boards, there's a company level objective and key result. And you can see multiple teams aligning to them. So the dark purple line shows the movement on the needle at a team level automatically moves the KR at a company level. The dotted line show the influence of this particular team for moving the KRs at a company level. So just a quick overview of it. These are sample OKRs. There'll always be a question when you go into Cadence saying that, hey, if I need to manage it by key results instead of managing it by like an entire team level, you could do that as well. Here is a pretty more complex board. You can drill down within each of these boards and take a look at it. So I'll just shift into a different view. When you actually run check-in meetings or when you have conversations on your KRs, it does tend to happen at a key result level. Say, for example, some of the business organizations may be running this at a key result level. For example, you want to increase the revenue in emerging markets from X to Y. So you can, here you have visualization. Here the KR is increase revenue from 100 million to 400 million. This is broken down into new business team and protein engineering team, sales and marketing team, and international sales team, so on and so forth. You can see that one team is doing extremely well, other team is not. And you can add your conversations and comments right here, which is what we call as check-ins or conversations, feedback, and comments to ping and figure out, hey, what's happening and what is the narrative behind why we are able to move the needle or not able to move the needle. So we'll go back to how this entire process gets started. It starts within the context of the platform by creating a team. So once you as leaders set your objectives and key results at a company level, we can create a new team called Awesome Growth Team or Product Team. Since we have and we can invite team members into it. The team members can do it themselves, and you as a leader just have to set your center level KRs to get started. For the purpose of the demo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-install the KRs that are already there. So we have built-in templates for you to do that. So I'm just going to pick one, which is at a product level or culture level. Install it and get started. So once you have all your objectives and key results in place, you can drive ownership at an individual level within the context of the platform and track it at an individual level or at a team level. The way check-in meetings happen typically in OKRs is very simple. I'm just going to shift to a team where we have OKRs pre-established. So this is an engineering team, and we'll jump right into the insights, where all the tracking, how we have progressed in our objectives and key results is all put in place. And you can have your check-in meetings in one go, saying that, hey, great job on improving the onboarding process from 15 minutes to 5 minutes. Or you may be saying that, hey, great job on improving the security of the product in order to help our product be the most secure product, or great job in improving, making Samsung Pay app the most preferred app in the vendor ecosystem. So you track how all your progress through the narrative, and you can drive assignments. We have built-in integrations with Jira and your internal systems as well to help you scale through it. In short, when you scale OKRs, if you're doing it only at a leadership level, Excel is more than enough. But as you scale it across the company, tools such as Fitbots software help you establish the need. There's one point saying that, hey, my team members have been doing a great job. How do I bring out all the great job or their wins and check-ins all highlighted to the global platform, because the leadership is changing or the teams are changing at a global level? So you can pull out individual reports or team reports, which have the entire narrative, either at an individual level or across multiple quarters. All the history is maintained within the context of the platform, so that you can bring out all the good work that you have done as a GCoE and show it, saying that, hey, which are the quarters that you did not do well, which are the quarters that you did do well, and how is that the change in strategy in terms of execution has helped you move and establish value at a company level. I'll just take a pause here. We have more. We have prediction and insights on so to help you actually roll out and manage OKRs. But here's a quick view of Fitbots OKR platform and how we help you do that. Back to you, Vidya, to conclude this session.
Yeah, thanks, Kashi. And it was really wonderful chatting with everybody on OKRs. And that's it from us. But as we always say, happy OKRing. And if you want to energize your next level teams to the big vision and strategy that you have, then OKRs is a great thing to consider. Handing it back to Namita for her closing comments.
Thank you so much, Vidya and Kashi. Extremely useful. And I think the exercise definitely helped internalize some of it. Just quickly bringing my slide up again. Prashant, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, so I think I had to end on a joke as well, just so that it was quite an overwhelming session. I know between the two of us, we've thrown quite a bit at you to assimilate, but happy to take any questions, either for the first part or the second part. General feedback in terms of, do you think that this is something you all will adapt and adopt in your organizations, and etc. So we'll just take about 5 or 10 minutes of that before we close the session for the day.
So I'll go, Kavita here. Definitely makes sense. For the simple reason, I just came onto the role and I'm still trying to understand who does what. And what I have realized is that everybody has a job to do and they are doing something. Yeah. But how do they measure success for themselves and for the org? What is in it for the org is something which needs to be clarified. Absolutely. So if you follow this entire methodology, everybody understands what is the role they are playing and how are they really impacting the bigger picture or the overall strategy cascade the way we would have it. Absolutely. So will I be able to do the amount of justice you have done and the way you have done it? I'm not sure, but I will definitely reach out to you for support. Needs to be done, has to be done, and not taking away the fact that the team had put in a lot of effort. We just want to change the narrative and make it more relevant to each and every person so that they are able to say what they did. And yet when you go to the leaders, they can say that, yes, I can see what you are trying to bring to the table.
Yeah, absolutely, Kavita. I think two things. I think I absolutely agree with you in that you don't want to negate the team effort, but you do want to validate it and qualify it for the larger global organization. And I think, where we bring in a lot of that perspective is how other organizations have done this, right? So use us for the industry perspective, the outside and sort of neutral party point of view, and to influence and define a lot of your strategic goals. So happy to support in any way we can. Let us know.
Definitely. I'll reach out to you. Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Namita. Thanks, team.
Kavita. Thanks for attending.
Hey, so this is Abhay. I head the India Delivery Center for Epic Global.
Okay.
And the
organization, I'm saying at a global level, is very progressive. It's a market leader in the global technology kind of space. Yet when we look at our planning and the way in which we put together our EOPs, for example, there many times people miss writing and stating, things very clearly. So of course, there's always like, what is the defining purpose of activities and things. But I think the way you explain it came out very clearly. At least I'm talking of the OKRs part, the way it was explained, which is like made it more specific. And like Kavita pointed out, people can connect as a team. What is the bigger picture in each of the actions and items that they take? It's a very simple thing, frankly speaking, if you ask me. But it started with that in my mind. When I started looking at it, I said, hey, do I need to go through this session of 2 hours for this purpose? But then it kept on building up and really, got me in touch with the fact that, hey, sometimes these are the things which really matter, which make it very specific, and people can then follow it like in an agile methodology in terms of, not just writing it down and reviewing it after a period of 6 months or something, but connecting to it and going back to it again and again. So yeah, quite interesting. And the second part, which I do want to comment on, is of course the part which we started on, which is from Zinnov, from your team and yourself. And that's also something which is what we'll be looking forward to. At least I'm very keen on looking at what we can do to be able to spell out what we want to achieve in the next 3 years. We are also at an early stage of offshoring, I would say. Last 2 years have been huge in terms of what we moved as a needle. And we have a global, leader who's part of the CXO forum, like you mentioned, you need to have a champion. So that's all in position. But there's always that resistance and reluctance. And of course, like I think somebody also pointed out that you can't have an India-specific agenda. So from me, like, I don't want to be the villain of things which people don't want to get done in their views. But certainly, it's to kind of help graduate people towards understanding what is the wider forum, what are the wider kind of, market out there and what can be possible. So teaming up and collaborating with, others will always be helpful. So, yep.
Absolutely. I think both sessions were alluding to the same end goal, which is to be able to provide clarity and cutting through the noise. So absolutely, Abhay. I think both of us are happy to support you. I think the beauty is in the simplicity of OKRs, and that's why I'm a big fan personally as well. So I'll let Vidya jump in if she has anything to say.
No, I absolutely, delighted to, share more. And yeah, OKRs has been an eye opener. We drink our own champagne, as we say it. In Fitbots, we said OKRs as, and this is definitely been a great experience, especially in growing a startup like ourselves.
Bringing a growth mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey Namita, this is Prashant from United Healthcare. I head up the Bangalore site for United Healthcare altogether. I have my colleague Vinod who drives strategy for us, well, for my team. Okay. Just want to kind of take a moment to state that we've been living the paradigm of lead and lag indicators and balanced scorecards throughout. But I think with the OKR demonstration today, that was very, very powerful, right? I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of moving the needle, and we'll definitely want to reach out to you folks. And also, kudos to Vidya and Kashi for driving a very intuitive and insightful presentation together. So, in touch. That's all I can state at this point in time. Thank you.
Kashi, on a lighter note, I have to add that example which you gave of the lift, right? So previous to this role, I was in tech support, and when you would just have a conversation and you would ask one of the tech support frontline people as to what do you do, I take tech support calls. Like, no, you don't do that. You do something which is bigger, right? At the end of the day, you resolve customer issues or you help them get more productive. So the question is that it can't just be a statement. You have to build that brand within each and every level. So I just went back remembering how we were trying to do it, and it just got the same at the memories back. So thanks for sharing again.
Yeah, thanks. In fact, one of the KRs that we recently worked with a tech support firm was that they were implementing WhatsApp support and automated bot support for the voice. The IVRs are probably dead by now. We all know that. and all tech support people are going away, but they have a new role to play in training the bots. So there is a new role even for them. So they are implementing automated bots to do that, and being able to connect for each of those executives saying that, hey, now I'm training machines to do tech support than me doing it myself is a great narrative for them to participate and still be relevant. So there's a lot of story that we do.
Completely aligned. Thanks.
So thank you so much. I will touch base with Fitbots and see what we can share from their version of the presentation. We will also share a version of ours together in the same email. If you'd like any help, any kind of support, please do reach out to us. We'd be happy to orchestrate conversations, get your need, etc., and support you in any way we can as you go ahead and define your 2025 story. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out and being here for over 2 hours now. We hope you found it useful and looking forward to chatting with actually most of you again. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Have an amazing day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.